How 5,000 sailors eat, sleep, and shower on a $13 billion aircraft carrier. It's 2 a.m. on the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. A fighter jet just slammed onto the runway at 150 miles per hour and stopped in under 2 seconds. 2 floors below, a sailor is sound asleep in a bed the size of a coffin. He's 3 feet from a wall packed with jet fuel lines, and he doesn't even flinch. He's too tired to care. 5 floors below him, cooks are already making the next of about 17,000 meals this ship will serve today. Somewhere else on the ship, a 19-year-old is standing in a shower stall the size of a phone booth, racing a stopwatch in his head. The water hitting his skin was ocean water 2 hours ago. A nuclear reactor boiled it clean. $13 billion. That's the actual price tag of the USS Gerald R. The most expensive warship ever built by any country on Earth. And packed inside that number are more than 5,000 people. Not machines, not numbers on a spreadsheet. Real people who miss their moms, who count down days on a calendar taped inside a locker, who have to eat, sleep, shower, and work every single day, while floating on top of a nuclear reactor, months away from home, with nowhere to go if something goes wrong. So how do you keep a small city alive at sea, with no grocery store, no gas station, and no way out? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at just a ship the same way again. And here's a question for you before we even get started. What's the longest you've ever gone without a real bed, a hot shower, or a home-cooked meal? Drop your answer in the comments, because by the end of this video, you'll realize it doesn't come close. Before we go inside, you need to understand how big this thing really is, because the scale of it is almost hard to believe. The ship is over 1,100 feet long. That's almost the length of the Empire State Building lying on its side. It weighs more than 100,000 tons when fully loaded, about the same as 20,000 elephants standing on top of each other. Below the flight deck, there are more than 20 stories of steel, stacked downward instead of up. Over 2,000 rooms, around 1,400 miles of electrical cable, enough to stretch from New York to Chicago and back. Every day, the ship uses and remakes about 400,000 gallons of fresh water. It carries around 90 aircraft. The flight deck alone covers more than 4.5 acres, bigger than 3 football fields lined up end to end. And 2 nuclear reactors buried deep inside can run for more than 20 years without refueling. Together they make enough electricity to power a mid-sized American city. The crew size itself tells its own story. Older Nimitz-class carriers can carry a combined total of over 6,000 people once you count the ship's company and the full air wing together. The newer Gerald R. was actually designed to run leaner, with a total complement closer to 4,500, thanks to automation that replaced hundreds of jobs sailors used to do by hand. Either way, you're talking about a small American town's worth of people, sealed inside a single hull, floating hundreds of miles from the nearest land. But here's what those numbers don't tell you. Behind every one of them is a person standing far from home, doing a job most Americans will never see, so the rest of us can sleep peacefully at night without thinking twice about it. Now picture thousands of those people, living, working, and surviving inside one giant machine. That's where this story really starts. Where all the water comes from. Seawater is everywhere on this ship, and it's useless for almost everything. You can't drink it, you can't cook with it, it will rust metal and wreck an engine in days. It surrounds this ship on every side, endless and blue, and not one drop of it is safe to touch your lips. So the ship makes its own water, from nothing but ocean and heat, in a process that feels almost like magic if you don't know how it works. Deep inside the hull, the nuclear reactors get hot enough to boil seawater until it turns to steam. The salt gets left behind. Then the steam cools back down into pure, clean water. This is called distillation, and the ship can make hundreds of thousands of gallons of it every single day. That water becomes 5,000 showers. It becomes coffee shared between shifts, laundry washed at midnight, and even the steam that launches jets off the deck at dawn. All of it starts inside a reactor. Most sailors on this ship will never actually see. Tucked away behind walls of steel, quietly keeping everyone alive without asking for a single thank you. There's something almost poetic about it, if you stop to think about it. The same ocean that separates these sailors from everyone they love is the exact same ocean that keeps them alive out here. Every cup of coffee, every warm shower, every glass of water at dinner traces back to the very thing that makes them feel so far from home. The engineers who run those reactors almost never get thanked for it. Most sailors on board never even see the reactor spaces, since access is restricted to a small, highly trained team. But every single person on the ship depends on that team completely. If something ever went wrong with the water system, it wouldn't just mean cold coffee. It would mean rationed drinking water for thousands of people, hundreds of miles from the nearest port. That pressure sits quietly on the shoulders of a handful of engineers. Most of the crew will never even meet. But water alone doesn't run a city, and it doesn't comfort a homesick sailor at the end of a 16-hour shift. You still need somewhere for thousands of people to actually rest. Sleeping in a space smaller than a refrigerator. On the older Nimitz-class carriers, junior sailors sleep in berthing compartments that can hold up to 180 people in a single room. Picture that, 180 racks, stacked 3 high, packed wall to wall, lit only by red nightlights, so someone can always find their way to the bathroom without waking the sailor next to them. The newer Ford-class carriers, the ones that actually cost that $13 billion price tag, were designed to fix this. Instead of massive 180-man rooms, the Ford's berthing areas were redesigned down to about 40 racks per compartment, similar to the smaller rooms senior sailors used to get. It's meant to cut down on noise and foot traffic. But here's the catch nobody talks about. Government reports on the Ford have found that if every single bunk on the ship needed to be filled during real combat operations, the ship would actually come up roughly 159 beds short. That means even on the most advanced, most expensive warship ever built, there may not be a bed for every single person on board when the ship is at full strength. Each rack itself is barely big enough to roll over in, with only about 2 feet of headroom above your face, not enough to sit up straight. Sailors describe it as sleeping inside a drawer. A thin curtain pulls shut for privacy, and inside that tiny space, most sailors keep a small light, a phone, and maybe one photo from home taped to the wall beside their head. Everything else they own for the deployment has to fit inside a locker roughly the size of a large suitcase, holding an entire life in a space most people wouldn't use to store winter coats. The lights stay off around the clock in these berthing compartments, because the ship runs 24-hour flight operations, which means someone is always coming off shift while someone else is trying to fall asleep. Sailors get used to sleeping through blaring intercom announcements, slamming hatches, and the distant thud of jets landing several decks above their heads. Many say it takes about 2 weeks to fully adjust, and after that, the noise becomes almost invisible, like white noise they no longer register. What's harder to adjust to is the loss of time itself. With no windows anywhere in these sleeping compartments, and a ship that can cross multiple time zones in a single day, sailors often lose track of whether it's morning or midnight within their first week aboard. Some describe waking up from a nap, completely unsure if they slept for 40 minutes or 4 hours, glancing at a clock just to reorient themselves before starting their next task. And still, every single night, thousands of exhausted sailors climb into these narrow racks, pull that thin curtain shut, and manage to fall asleep anyway, because their next shift starts in a few short hours whether they're ready or not. For most of them, that tiny bunk becomes something close to sacred. It's the one square footage on the entire ship where nobody can reach them, where the pressure of the job finally lifts, if only for a few hours at a time. Sailors who've been through multiple deployments say they remember exact details about that bunk years later. The creak of the mattress, the specific way the curtain smelled, because it was the only piece of the ship that ever truly felt like theirs. Racing the stopwatch, showers, coffee, and 2-minute comfort. Even with the reactors making hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day, there still isn't unlimited water for thousands of people. So the crew lives by a rule almost every sailor learns in their first week: the Navy shower. Step in, turn the water on just long enough to get wet, turn it off. Soap up in the dark, with the water completely shut off. Turn it back on, only to rinse. The whole thing takes under 2 minutes, timed almost by instinct after a while. It doesn't sound like much, but for a lot of sailors, that 2-minute shower becomes the only private moment they get all day. No orders barking over the intercom. No 40 other people in the room, Just warm water and a few seconds of quiet, and for some sailors, it's where the tears finally come, quick and quiet, before they towel off and put their game face back on. Some rooms even have handwritten signs reminding people to hurry up. Sailors who take long showers become the least popular person in the room fast, because someone else is always waiting outside that door. On a ship packed with thousands of people for months at a time, little rules like this actually matter a lot, because when personal space barely exists, these small rules protect the little comfort people have left. New sailors sometimes learn this lesson the hard way, coming out of a shower to find an impatient line and a few pointed looks waiting for them. A small embarrassment that teaches them faster than any instructor could. Laundry works the same way. Big industrial machines run non-stop, washing thousands of uniforms a day in an environment full of jet fuel, grease, and salt. Every drop of water on this ship gets tracked and rationed, not because the Navy is being harsh, but because on a floating nuclear city, water is the one thing you can't just go buy more of. And somehow, in a place built entirely for war, sailors still find a way to make 2 rushed minutes under a showerhead feel like a small act of self-care. Down below, in a completely different world, cooks are running one of the biggest restaurant operations on the planet, one that never closes. The galley crew serves around 17,000 meals a day, split across 4 separate meal periods: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midrats, short for midnight rations. A full meal built specifically to fuel the night shift, keeping the flight deck running at 3 a.m. The kitchen has to hit strict nutrition targets too, providing about 2,850 calories a day for male sailors and 2,100 for female sailors, while also working around food allergies and religious dietary needs across a crew of thousands. The daily numbers alone are almost hard to believe. On a single day, the galley can go through roughly 1,600 pounds of chicken or meat, 350 pounds of lettuce, 160 gallons of milk, 30 cases of cereal, and an astonishing 20,000 cups of coffee. That coffee number says everything about what it takes to keep a night shift alert at 4 a.m., thousands of miles from anything familiar. On the newest carrier, the USS Gerald R. The daily grocery bill runs somewhere between $45,000 and $65,000, adding up to well over $1 million in food every single month. None of that food comes from a nearby store. Every 7 to 14 days, a supply ship pulls up alongside the carrier while both vessels are moving at full speed, and crews transfer 400,000 to as much as 1 million pounds of food across open water using cables strung between the 2 ships, an operation called underway replenishment, or UNREP. It's one of the most dangerous routine tasks in the entire Navy. 2 massive ships holding a precise distance apart, while tons of food, fuel, and supplies swing between them above the waves. If the weather turns rough, or the timing slips even slightly, the whole operation gets scrubbed and rescheduled, which means cooks sometimes have to stretch a shrinking inventory a few extra days while they wait for calmer seas. Menus get rewritten every 14 to 21 days, so sailors aren't eating the same rotation for months on end, and fresh items like feta cheese or local produce sometimes get added from whatever port or country the ship is closest to. Food isn't just comfort here, it's part of the mission. A well-fed sailor thinks faster and reacts quicker on a deck where one slow reaction can get someone killed. The Navy takes the galley almost as seriously as it takes the reactor room. But talk to sailors who've served, and they'll tell you food means something deeper than fuel. It's the 1 hour of the day that feels a little like home. The smell of something baking, the sound of laughter over a tray of food. For a few minutes, the war outside the hull disappears. Meal lines become their own kind of therapy. Sailors who worked opposite shifts and barely see each other all week end up crossing paths at the midnight meal, trading a tired smile, a quick joke, maybe a complaint about the weather back home that neither of them can actually feel anymore. For some of the youngest sailors on board, barely out of high school, that 15-minute meal is the closest thing to a family dinner they'll get for months. Nobody talks about rank in the food line. Everybody's just hungry, tired, and glad for a minute to sit down. And the Navy leans into that. Birthdays still get cake at sea, sung off-key by a table full of tired sailors who barely know each other outside of work. Holidays get full dinners cooked from scratch, thousands of miles from home, while everyone quietly thinks about the empty seat at their family's table back on land. Many carriers even throw a steel beach picnic halfway through deployment. Grills wheeled out onto the same flight deck where jets were launching hours earlier. Music playing, sailors finally getting some sun on faces that have been pale and indoors for weeks. Here's the part most people miss completely. Surviving 6 or 9 months at sea isn't really about the jets, the reactors, or the food. It's about the mind, and how hard it fights to hold on to hope in a place that never lets you forget how far from home you really are. Sailors lose a lot of small freedoms most of us never think about. Choosing what to eat, choosing when to sleep, stepping outside whenever they feel like it, calling someone they love on a bad day, the second they need to hear that voice. Internet is slow and limited. Phone calls home are rationed. Some sailors go weeks without hearing a parent's or partner's voice, relying on short messages sent through a weak satellite connection, reading the same 3 sentences over and over until the next one comes. Homesickness on a carrier isn't the exception. It's the quiet thing almost everyone is carrying, even the ones who smile the most on deck. Some sailors describe a specific kind of ache that hits around the 4th or 5th month, when the excitement of deployment has worn off completely and the finish line still feels impossibly far away. It's not homesickness like missing a place. It's missing a version of themselves that only exists back on land. The version who gets to sleep in on a Saturday, hug their mom whenever they want, or just walk outside and feel grass under their feet. And yet, somehow, a real community forms anyway, sometimes stronger than anything built on land. Friendships made in cramped sleeping rooms turn into some of the strongest bonds these sailors will ever have. There's an unspoken rule that runs through every carrier crew. Look out for the person next to you, keep quiet when someone's sleeping, and never let a shipmate go through a hard day alone. Sailors who've served describe it as a strange kind of love, one built not on choice but on necessity. The same way people in a small town look out for one another simply because there's nobody else around to do it. Chaplains on board help sailors through breakups, deaths back home, and the quiet pain of missing a kid's first steps from 6,000 miles away. Small things help people get through it. Photos taped inside a locker, days counted off on a handwritten calendar, inside jokes that only make sense to the people who lived through that deployment together. Some sailors keep a running list of the first meal they'll order the moment they step off the ship. A small, silly ritual that somehow makes the whole deployment feel a little more survivable. It's the most expensive weapon ever built, and that number only covers the ship itself. It doesn't include the roughly 90 aircraft that fly off its deck, the other ships escorting it, or the tens of thousands of people supporting the whole mission from shore. But the real cost isn't about money. It's about time nobody gets back. Birthdays missed, funerals attended only through a screen, if at all. Anniversaries spent apart, marked with a short message instead of a hug. Thousands of normal days at home that never come again, that these sailors will only ever hear about secondhand. And still, every single day, this floating city of thousands of strangers turns into something close to family. They cook for each other. They cover each other's shifts without being asked. They check on each other after bad news from home, sitting quietly beside a bunk when words don't help. And they trust each other with their lives on a deck where one mistake can be the last one, which is a kind of trust most people will never have to test in their entire lives. Think about that for a second. Most of us go our whole lives without ever needing to trust a coworker with our safety, let alone our life. These sailors do it before their first cup of coffee every single morning, standing next to people who were complete strangers just months earlier, now closer than some family members back home. That's not something you can put a price tag on, even one as big as $13 billion. That's the real achievement here. Not the reactors, not the catapults, not the 1,400 miles of cable running under the deck. It's the fact that people can be dropped into one of the most extreme, dangerous, lonely places on Earth, far from everyone and everything they love, and still find a way to build a life inside it. Meal by meal, shower by shower, day by day, until they finally see land again, and see the people who've been waiting for them the whole time. Because at the end of every deployment, what these sailors remember isn't the size of the ship or the price tag on the side of it. It's the people standing next to them on that deck, still there, still standing, still counting down the days home together. Somewhere out there right now, that same ship is still moving through open ocean, still boiling seawater into showers, still serving midnight meals to sailors who miss their families more than they'll ever say out loud. And whether we ever think about it or not, they're out there anyway, doing the job, so the rest of us never have to. So here's the real question. After everything you just learned, what part of this life do you think you could actually survive? The tiny bunk? The 2-minute showers? The months without seeing anyone you love? Let us know in the comments. And if this pulled you in, there's a lot more beneath the surface of this story. Subscribe, and come explore the next one with us.